So hello everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're just popping in now, we're going to get started officially at 11:30, but I wanted to say good morning. So thank you Preeti for saying hi, good hello, good morning. Thank you to everybody that's coming in. While we're waiting to get started at 11:30, I would love to encourage you all, just like you've been doing if you've been tuning in on Monday mornings with us here live on Facebook, just to let us know where you're joining us from. Okay, so go ahead in the chat. Hello, Maddie. Good morning. Just let us know where you're joining us from, whether it's New Jersey or Pennsylvania or New York or elsewhere around the world. We'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Okay, so let's take a look. So hello again to Maddie. Hello, Catherine. Hi, Joe. Hi, Carvey. Hi, Carvey. I hope I said your name right. Hello, Catherine from Florida. Thanks, Catherine. Hi, Nihir. Nihar. I hope I said that right too, from DC. Hello. Oh, from Massachusetts. That's awesome. So I see some of our friends are asking what age this is for. That's a great question. So thank you for asking that question. This program and our Monday mornings are for our youngest audience members. So it is for preschool to second grade. So if you're somewhere from 3 years old to 7, 8, or even 9, you're welcome to join us. Really, it's for that age group, but any and all of our friends are welcome to this program and all of our programs. But this program is tailored for that audience, preschool to second grade specifically. Okay? So, hi Lucy from Union, New Jersey. Awesome. Haley and Hazel, good morning from PA. Hi. Hi, Biljana from Jersey City. That's awesome. Right around the Science Center. Great. I see a lot of friends from Jersey City too. Hunter from Connecticut. Hello, Hunter. Good morning. Rishi from New Jersey. Thank you, all of our friends, for joining in. If you're just joining in now and you're popping in this morning, first of all, welcome. We're really glad you're here. Like I said in the beginning, we're going to get started at 11:30. But while we're waiting for the rest of our friends to join and more friends to join, we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from. Okay, so Ivy and Lily from Maryland. Hello, Ivy and Lily. Good morning. Rowan from Jersey City. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Vivian and Peggy from Staten Island. Hello, good morning. Hi, Carla from New Jersey. Lewis from New York. Hello. Eli from Bud Lake. Good morning. Hi, Kevin and Katie from Virginia. Hi, Kevin and Katie. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Oh, thanks, Catherine. I'm really glad that you guys are enjoying it. It's great to hear that feedback. We're glad that you're enjoying it. We hope that you are. And we're really, honored and it's a privilege to do this kind of work live on Facebook to connect with our friends here and around the world. So it's really great. It's quite a great experience for me as an educator to do something like this. So it's my pleasure. Kriti, hi Kriti. Oh, that's awesome. We have some friends from Australia and New Hampshire. That's really cool. Hi Ella from PA. Hi Carmine and Delilah from New Jersey. Hello, good morning. Hi Sarvesh from India. Hi Sarvesh. Good morning. All right, I'm seeing a lot of friends. Hi Liam. Good morning. Thanks for saying good morning, friends. So Deanna, I see you're asking what materials and objects they will need for today. So that's a great question, and this is a good time to talk about that before we officially get started. Okay? To make sure everybody can hear me, I'm going to take a moment and just make sure the music is all the way down. Because I know I have a soft voice. I speak really softly, so I want to make sure I'm not competing with the music. But Diana and all our friends joining us today, for our program, we're going to need 3 sheets of paper, okay, as well as some tape. So it doesn't have to be a specific kind of paper, it can be any paper, but you're going to want to try and grab 3 pieces of paper and some tape. Okay, you don't need a whole roll of tape, it doesn't need to be a full roll, it just needs to be some tape. So you can tape your paper into different shapes. Because as you can tell, my friends, we're talking about super strong shapes today. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I see a lot of friends are still saying good morning. Hi, Owen and Nia from Montclair. Nia, I hope I said your name right. I apologize if I didn't. I see Courtney is here and Frankie and Moosey. Good morning. I see a lot of friends joining us. So if I didn't get to say good morning to you specifically live here on Facebook, please know that I'm really glad you're joining us. It's wonderful that you're able to tune in. We hope that you enjoy today's program, as have you been enjoying the rest of our programs from previous weeks. Okay? So since it is 11:31, what I'm going to do, friends, is I'm going to change what you're seeing on this screen right now. So in a moment, you're going to see all of me, so we can just say good morning and talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. All right, good morning. So everybody, if this is your very first time joining us, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Mr. Kengo. I'm one of the educators here at Liberty Science Center. And today, like we mentioned before, this program is for our youngest audience members. So my work at the Science Center has me working with all of our friends and all of our families for students and children from pre-K to second grade. So that is what this age group or this program is meant to serve, our youngest friends. Okay, so if you're within that age group, you're absolutely welcome. We're glad that you're here. If you're a little older and you just want to tune in and join us for some fun and some science, you're always welcome too. Okay? Now, what I like to do, everybody, is just make sure that you can understand some of the things that will be happening today. So what you're going to see, if you see me look this way at any point in today's presentation, that's just to make sure I'm seeing your comments live on Facebook, right? So during today's program, I might be asking you guys to help me respond from home. Okay, so you can feel free to continue using the chat box just like you have been using to say good morning and let me know where you're joining us from. But just so you know, if you see me look this way, that's for me to take a look and see those comments as they're coming in. So if I don't happen to see your question, friends, I apologize in advance. Just want to make sure that you know that I really appreciate those things, and I want to make sure that you know that I don't miss it on purpose. Okay? So if you have a question, feel free to type it in, and hopefully towards the end of our presentation, I'll be able to see those things. But before we get started with our program, since we're doing this live on Facebook, I do want to take a moment and say thank you to everybody that has been contributing to Liberty Science Center through donations. Liberty Science Center is a nonprofit organization, and as such, we welcome and thank all of our families and our members and our friends for donating any kind of donation of any size to help us continue doing programs like this, as well as many others to connect with our students and our families and our friends from home, especially since we can't open the Science Center quite yet. We look forward to opening the Science Center. I know I look forward to seeing everybody. When you come and visit the Science Center again, I would love to say hello. But thank you, and I do want to take a moment to say thank you to all of our friends that and our members and our families that have made contributions of any size to help us continue doing work like this. It's quite an honor, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. So let's get started, okay? So today's program is called Super Strong Shapes, and what we're going to be exploring is a big question that's on your screen right now. Okay, now that question, everybody, is what I like to call a driving question. Okay, so my friends, if you've been tuning in from home, right, we might get used to that idea of a driving question, but if this is your first time, right, a driving question is what I like to think of as a big question that is going to drive our learning for today, okay, for right now. So it doesn't have to have an answer right now. You don't need to know the answer at this moment. But it's still great to think about what we think the answer is. Okay? So that question is right on your screen, but I'll read it aloud for us. Okay? So that driving question is, how does the shape of an object affect its properties? And I'll read it one more time. How does the shape of an object affect its properties? Okay, so if you want to type in your comments or your thoughts in the chat, you're welcome to do that. Okay, but if you also have questions around that question, that's really great to ask them too. Okay, so what I'm going to do so that I can see those things, I'm going to go ahead and look over here and switch what I'm seeing on my second screen, which is right over here, to Facebook, so I can see your questions as they're coming in. Okay. So let's see. Oh, no questions yet. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. So, that question again, right? How does the shape of an object affect its properties? One of the big questions we might have about that question is, what does Mr. Kingle mean by a property, right? It's different from if your families own property, right? They might own land or might own a house or might own somewhere they live. It's different. It's a different kind, it's a different meaning to this word, okay? But a property, what I like our friends to think about is it almost like an adjective, right? So if you've been practicing adjectives in school, this might be a really great time to think about some examples of adjectives, right? And an adjective is a word that we use to describe something, right? A noun, a thing, a place, right? So an adjective. We want to think of properties as an adjective. So here are some examples of possible properties, right? Flexible. You might describe something as flexible, right? I like using in my room back at the Science Center in the Young Learner Lab, we have lots of pipe cleaners. And pipe cleaners are a great example of something that is flexible. You can bend it into lots of different shapes. You can make it into lots of different things. You can make it into bracelets, right? So flexible is a great property. And it's a property that we would use to describe pipe cleaners. Okay? Now there's other properties too. Property might be something we describe as hard, right? Mr. Kingle's table that I'm sitting right now in my chair is very hard, right? My glasses, they're hard so they don't break and they can stay on my face so that I can see you. I could see my presentation today, okay? But also things that are soft, right? So we wouldn't want a hard pillow, right? So we want a soft pillow, right? And these are different examples, simple examples of properties. Okay, now there's lots of other ones, so if you shared one, I'm going to go ahead and take a look right now for some more examples. But if you're getting used to using the chat box, or you simply just want to listen, friends, that's totally fine. You don't have to use the chat box, but if you would like to and share your thoughts with us, you're welcome to do so. Okay, so if you want to take a moment and type in a property that you know and you're excited to share, you can go ahead and put that in now. So let's see. Nope, I'm not seeing anything quite yet, but you know what? Let's keep going, okay? So what we're going to do is to help us understand and practice this idea of properties. I like us to think about what we would describe the properties for these objects. Okay, so Mr. Kango's material right on this screen right now, we might have that in our kitchen, right? So if I were to think of an example for our property for this material, it might be something like hard or even wooden, right? Something like that, okay? How about this one? We might use hard again, right? Or bumpy or rough, right? Words like that. Those are still properties. And this is really important to think about for the experiment we're about to try in a little bit. All right? So let's keep going. What about this one? Right? our little friend. I have a dog at home, and it's not this dog, but if you have a dog or a pet or even a cat, right? Um, our animals it's a really great example to think about the properties we would use to describe them, right? And I would think if I'm looking at this picture, I would think soft or fluffy, right? Or cuddly. This dog looks really cuddly to me, right? Yeah, I see some of our friends are typing in soft. I see lots of friends typed in bumpy for our rock, right? And so those are great examples of properties, friends. How about this one? So if you can't tell what it is looking really closely, this is the pipe cleaners that I was mentioning before, right? I had it on my brain because I was looking through our presentation for today, right? So these are pipe cleaners. If you want, just like you've been doing so far, and I see a lot of comments coming in on the chat, so awesome for those friends that are sharing, right, their thoughts. But again, if you don't want to share thoughts or you don't want to type in anything into the chat, that's okay. You don't have to feel pressured, right? Mr. King was not forcing you to type in anything. I just want to make sure that if you feel like you want to share your thoughts, you know how to do so. Okay? Okay. So yeah, I see some friends are typing in fuzzy, and I like how some of our friends wrote in slim. That's one I didn't think about, actually. That's a really good one. I see soft and flexible, so awesome. Now, what are we doing with all of these properties that we've been talking about, and why have we focused on properties so much as part of today's presentation? Well, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be exploring how the shape of something can affect its properties, right? So something like our paper, right? So this is where your paper comes in, you guys, right? So we have three sheets of paper. If we were to change the shape of that paper, how would it affect its properties, right? So right now, if I were to describe and use an adjective for my paper, right, I might use the word flexible, right, or bendable, or foldable, right? I might use something like smooth, right? But what we're going to explore today is if we were to change the shape and make this paper into different three-dimensional shapes, how would that affect its properties? Would it become harder or stronger, right? And we're going to test it using three different shapes. So the three different shapes we're going to be making today is a cylinder, a triangular prism, and a rectangular prism. All right? A cylinder, a triangular prism, and a rectangular prism. Now, if you've never heard those words before or you didn't quite get there in school, right, practicing identifying those three-dimensional shapes, what Mr. Kingle means by a three-dimensional shape is just when the shape is in three dimensions. It pops out. So if you take a look at the top of the pictures, right, on each of those shapes, you might recognize the shape itself, right? If we take a look at our cylinder, on the top is a circle. Right in the middle, there's a triangle. Right, if you follow Mr. Kingle's cursor on the screen, we can see there's a triangle there. Right, and our rectangular prism is a rectangle. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make our paper into these shapes and test which one is the strongest. Okay, so a three-dimensional shape is when you take that shape and make it pop out, right? So you can hold it in your hands versus something you draw on a piece of paper. So if you draw a circle on a piece of paper, we would describe that as two-dimensional since it's flat, right? On a piece of paper you drew it. Now, if you're not sure how to make these shapes, don't worry, friends. What we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through how to make them from home. All right? So what we're going to do right now, you guys, is I'm going to change the screen you're seeing again. And this time, instead of the presentation you're seeing right now, I'm going to put that down and I'm going to show you all of just myself. That way you can see how I'm working and the shape I'm creating and how we're going to make it. okay? But before we do that, I'd like to encourage you to think about which shape you think is going to be the strongest. So, before we make our shapes and test them, out of the three shapes, the cylinder, the triangular prism, and the rectangular prism, which do you think is going to be the strongest? The reason we're asking you to think about the strongest is because if you wanted to test your materials, which we'll have time to do, I'd like you to start thinking about books you can gather. So these are my books. So these are just from my shelf, right? And we're going to take these books, maybe one or more than one, and we're going to put it right on top of our shape. And we're going to see which one can hold a book, or if more than one shape can hold a book, we're going to see which one can hold the most books. Okay? So if you wanted to also gather just a book or a couple of books as we're working, you can go ahead and do that, friends. Okay? So if you want, you can go ahead and type in whichever shape you think is going to be the strongest. And I'm going to take a look over here into the chat to see what your guesses or your predictions are. All right? If you're not quite sure, friends, that's totally okay. So I see a lot of our friends, I see some ideas about the rectangular prism might be super strong. I see some friends are saying the triangular prism might be super strong. I see Vivian and Peggy said the cylinder is going to be the super strong one. Let's see what else. Oh, I see I see Moosey's friends are watching too. Thank you for sharing that, friends. I see a lot of our friends are saying a couple of different ones. I'm seeing some more cylinders coming in now. Let's see. So I see Andrew thinks it's going to be the rectangular prism. Thanks, Andrew, for answering, sharing your thoughts with us. I see Marlo thinks the cylinder, and Selena thinks the cylinder as well. Okay, so friends, great job sharing your thoughts with us. Making predictions like this is super important in science. Now, if we test it, right, and it happens to be the triangular prism, and we said the rectangular prism, or it happens to be the rectangular prism, and we said the cylinder, it's okay, right? That's totally fine. Right? Lots of things Mr. Kango makes predictions about don't quite happen the way I was predicting, and that's totally normal. That's an important step in science too. That helps us understand more about how the world works. Okay, so even if your guess isn't spot on, I'm really glad you're guessing with us and making predictions. That's super important. Okay? All right, so I'm going to switch the screen now. And what we're going to do, friends, is we're going to walk through creating your three different shapes. So let me go ahead and change what you're seeing. And here we go. Okay. So we're going to start first with our cylinder, friends. All right. So if you have your piece of paper, right, I have my 3 pieces of paper right here. So I'm going to take one at a time so I can focus all of my attention on making just one shape at a single time, right? So for my cylinder, I'm going to want to roll my hands like this, right? So if you've ever played with Play-Doh, many times if you wanted to roll into like a snake, you might roll your hands like this, right? We're going to do that same motion to create our cylinder. So I'm going to take my paper and I'm just going to roll it back and forth, right? And you can make your cylinder super tiny, right? Or you can let it go and make it a little larger. It's up to you. But remember, friends, what we're going to do with these shapes is we're going to try and balance a book on top. So if you have a super big book, you might want to make yours a little bit bigger. Okay, cool. So here is my cylinder, right? And we can tell there's that circle, and it's three-dimensional, right, because it's popping out. Now I'm going to take my tape. So if you have an adult with you to help you do this part, many times it's easier, right? Because holding your model with one hand, and adding some tape with the other or taking some tape off your tape dispenser with the other can be a challenge, right? So what we're going to do is just add some tape to our model. So here is mine. I added 2 pieces. I'm just going to add one more. Awesome. And there we go. So here is my cylinder, right? So again, and I'll show you, friends, how to do it. Right, so if you were working on your cylinder, and I know you couldn't see it when it was on the table, so I'll hold it up in the air to do it this time. What we're going to do is just going to roll it like this, right? So if you're practicing from home and you're working on your fine motor skills, meaning the muscles in your hands, right? These are really important for getting ready to write and hold markers and pencils and write your name, right? As well as cut things. It's really great to use your hands and practice these kinds of motions and projects. Okay, so here we go. So again, if you're following from home and working on that cylinder, you're just going to roll it. And you can see even Mr. Kingle struggling to hold it up like this as I do it. There I go. So here we go. And there is our cylinder. Alright? So here's mine. I'm going to take my cylinder. I'm just going to put it to this side for now. Okay? Because what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to work on my next shape. So I'm going to unfold this one. Right, and this time what we're going to make next, friends, is our triangular prism. So we're going to want to see a triangle if we're looking straight down, right? So for my cylinder, I wanted to be able to see a circle if I'm looking straight down, right? And I can see that circle. For my triangular prism, I'm going to want to see a triangle. So how I'm going to do that, and what works well for me, is if I take my piece of paper and I fold it into 3. Okay, so I'm going to do those folds flat on my table just because it's easier for me to fold when it's straight on my table. But after I'm done folding, I'll make sure to hold it up and show you. Okay, so I'm going to take my piece of paper and I'm going to fold it into 3 again. So I'm going to try my best to make it even. But if it's not even, it's okay, you guys. Okay? Right? Alright. I think I got it. So let's take a look. Oh, yep, I got it. So here, right here's my flat piece of paper, and you can see I made my 2 little creases. So I'm folding 2 times, right, to make my paper into 3 parts. Right, so I'm taking one side and folding it towards the middle. So here, and I'm folding along that crease that I made. And I'm going to take the other side and fold it towards the middle this time too. And fold along that crease. Now if I let go, and if I open up my paper, right, and I hold it like this, I should see that triangle, right? And that helps me make my triangular prism. Now the reason tape is going to be super important here, friends, is that we want to make sure that our model, as much as possible, is closed, right? Just like our cylinder was closed, right? So I'm going to take some tape and I'm going to tape it shut. So this time, luckily, my triangular prism can just sit on the table. So I can use both hands to add some tape. Okay, so here's my first piece. And let's take our tape. And I'm going to tape it to each side. So here you can see it's taped on the top. So now I just need to tape on the bottom. So I used like a drawing paper, friends, okay? But if you don't have drawing paper or super thick paper, you can feel free to use your notebook paper, or if you want, and you want to continue this experiment later, something great to try is trying different pieces of paper, right? So right now this paper is super thick. I wonder if I would get the same results if I tried a different piece of paper too, right? Did the same experiment, made the same shapes, but this time tried a thinner piece of paper, right? Maybe that would affect my results. Okay, so if you were really thinking that triangular prism might work well, right, maybe try a different piece of paper later on. Okay, so here is my triangular prism. And you can see it's taped shut. So we are on our last one. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to see if we have any questions in the chat box. Okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to let us know or let me know. I don't see any questions quite yet. So let's see. Nope. All right. I see some friends are saying the rectangular prism is going to be super strong. So Vandana, I see you're thinking rectangular prism. That's awesome. So let's keep going. So let's make our rectangular prism. So our rectangular prism, here is our last piece, right? Our third piece of paper. How we're going to make our rectangular prism is we're going to want to fold it into 4 sections, or 4 equal halves, okay, as much as we can. So how I like to do that is I'm going to go ahead and fold it sort of like when I was little I used to make lots of different fans, right? Because around this time of year in school it would get kind of warm, and outside it would get kind of warm too. So to help me stay cool, I made a little fan, and I would just fan myself like this. So I'm going to follow that same motion that I used to do. It's going to be a little bit different, but a similar idea. So I'm going to put it flat on my table, and I'm going to make those folds, but just like I did with my triangular prism, I'm going to hold it up at the end so that you can see the folds that I created. All right? Okay. So I'm going to make my first fold. And I think I made enough space there. Let's check a look. Oh, yep, I think I did. Maybe so. Yeah, kinda. Yeah. So you could see, look, there's a little bit of extra here. So even Mr. Kingo, I'd done this experiment a couple times, and I still didn't do it perfectly, but that's okay, right? It's about exploring, having fun, enjoying the experience, right, and doing some science. So I think I'm still going to be able to test this one just fine. And if it doesn't work the way I planned, I did make an extra one just in case. Okay? Okay. So here is my rectangular prism. So how I did that, you guys, is I wanted to fold it into 4 equal halves, right? Like I said. So what I did is I just made the first little fold about 3/4 across my paper, right? And just folded it inward. Now fold it along that crease, right? And then I'm going to make another fold in that same direction. And with this fold, I'm about halfway through my paper. Okay? Next, I'm going to fold it one last time, and then ideally it should go all the way to the edge. But like you saw in a moment ago, I have this little extra bit. But that's okay. I could take a scissor if I wanted to and make it cut off the rest, but that's okay. It's totally fine. But what we're going to want to do, just like we did with the others, is go ahead and tape it. Okay? So if you're working and following along from home, and you can see it kind of wants to fold into a triangular prism this time. But I'm going to go ahead and move this a little bit about, right, fold in the opposite direction, and then fold one more time. So it kind of stays together as a rectangular prism, as a rectangle. Cool. Yeah. All right, now we're going to add some tape. So I'm going to take my tape, And just like my triangular prism, it really helps me when I lay it flat on the table. So I'm going to go ahead and lay it flat. That way I have a nice sturdy area to work with. So taping this might be a little hard. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and fold this little bit of extra paper. Maybe that will help. And remember, you guys, right, if it doesn't work out the way we wanted, right, you can always try again later. The great thing about this experiment is all you really need is pieces of paper, right? So you can always try again. So now I made a little bit of like a little crease here. So that might help me hook on the extra bit. Oh yeah, that's going to be much easier for me to tape. Okay. There we go. Cool. Okay, so here is my first bit of tape. And let's see my other bit. And here we go. Let's see how this turned out. I think so. I think that works, right? Yeah. So there's my rectangular prism. So we have our three shapes. We have our rectangular prism. We have our triangular prism, right? And we have our cylinder. Now comes the fun part. What we're going to do is we're going to test them, right? So a moment ago or earlier, we were saying which one we thought would be the super strong shape or the strongest shape. A lot of our friends said cylinders, right? Some of our friends said triangular prism, and some of our friends said rectangular prism. So we have a lot of different opinions, which is really great. It's important in science too. Now comes the important step to test them. So if you have books, right, just like I do, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to place them right on top. So make sure, one, you're working in an area that you and your family have decided is okay and safe for you to work with, okay? And make sure that you're being safe too, okay? So how I'm going to test it and how I'm going to show you my tests, right? And just as a reminder, friends, if you guessed a certain shape and your shape isn't the strongest one, that's okay, right? When Mr. King was first learning this idea, I probably didn't get it right either, and that's totally normal, right? So I'm going to go ahead and change the screen you're seeing. So instead of this image, I'm going to switch it over to a different camera so that you can see the testing process a little bit better. All right, so let me go ahead and do that now. So here we go. So everybody, you should be seeing on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and test one shape at a time. So just for deciding which shape to test, I'm going to go ahead and test the triangular prism first. So what you're going to do, you guys, is you're going to, there we go, place it right on your table, standing upright. And then you're going to want to take your book and place it right on top. Okay? So here we go. Let's see. Oh, yeah, that worked out pretty well. Let's test another book. Oh, it crumbled. And that's okay, right? So it held up one book, but didn't help hold up a second book. So that was our triangular prism. Let's try the next one. Hopefully that wasn't super loud for my friends listening from home. If it was, I apologize. But let's check our rectangular prism, right? I like looking through this. It's kind of like looking through a telescope. So we're going to use our rectangular prism and put our books right on top, just like we did with our triangular prism. So our triangular prism held up one book, but struggled to hold up the other book. So let's check our rectangular prism. So I'm going to go ahead and put one up. It's holding up the towel of poo a little, well, yeah. So let's see the other one. Oh, it's holding up a second one. Let's try the third one. It held up all three. That's really cool. Okay, so just like I said, friends, sometimes it doesn't work out the way I was thinking, but you know what? We're going to talk about it in just a minute. But let's try the cylinder. So if you guessed the rectangular prism, that's awesome. I thought the rectangular prism was only going to hold up two, I'm going to be honest, but that's really cool. So let's check the last one, our cylinder. Alright, so if you're working from home and you made a cylinder too, go ahead and try yours. If yours is falling after one or even not holding up one book, that's okay, right? We can always try and make it again now that you see how to make these shapes from home. And today's program is a recording, so if you wanted to listen at it again or listen to it again another time, you can listen again and have the instructions on how to make those shapes at a later time. Alright? Okay, but let's get started. So I'm going to place one book right on top, and it held up one book okay. Let's try the second book. Yeah, held up a second book. And I'm going to put one more book. Yeah, it's holding up all three. Let me check Mr. Kingo's phone. I'm going to put my phone on top. Oh yeah, it's holding up my phone too. That's really cool. Okay, so we have our cylinder and our rectangular prism held up our books, all three of our books, and it held up Mr. Kingo's phone. So that's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do, you guys, is I'm going to switch back to the screen that we were looking at before, right, and take a look at what is happening. Okay, why did some shapes work really well, and why did some shapes work not so well? Okay, okay. So let me go and do that. So we tested each of our shapes, right, you guys? And we saw that our triangular prism held up one book, but beyond that it struggled, right? We can always test again. So if you wanted to make another one, right, I have a second triangular prism here. I can always test again to see if I get the same result. That's really important in science too. It's important to do multiple tests to make sure that the results we're getting are accurate. Right? So if you wanted to try again, that's totally fine. All right. Now, let's talk about what was happening, because the shapes that were super strong, right? One was a rectangular prism, and the other was the cylinder. Now, just like I was mentioning before, it didn't work out exactly the way I was planning, because normally the one that works out really well is the cylinder. The rectangular prism I've done in the past where it doesn't work really well. So it just so happened that it worked out really, really cool. And that's kind of the fun part of doing it live on Facebook. So let's talk about why the cylinder worked out really well. Well, what's going on, friends, is the cylinder has a really great job of having no edges. So like our rectangular prism and our triangular prism, they each have all of these points. Okay, instead of edges, I'll use the word points. Okay, and that's these areas right here. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, all of the weight and pressure ends up going to those points or those edges. Okay, and it affects how much weight is distributed across your shape. Whereas our cylinder has no points. So the weight ends up being evenly distributed across the entire surface or your entire shape so that it can end up holding more weight. Okay, so that's why I kept trying more things. So if you noticed and think back to what Mr. Kingo did, right, I did all of my books and then I wanted to add my phone. Right? If I had more books at my desk right now, I probably would have tried more books, right? Instead of 3 books, maybe it could have held up 6 books or 7 books. maybe it could have held up an even bigger or thicker book than the ones I had here, right? If you have any textbooks at home from school, maybe it can hold your textbooks too, right? What we did at the Science Center, and it was really cool, really fun, we ended up taking this idea and trying to explore it some more. So we took paper towel tubes, really sturdy, thick ones, and these are toilet paper tubes, but gives you the idea. We ended up taking those paper towel tubes and taping them all together, right? And we spray painted them yellow to make it look like a hive. And it just so happened that it was strong enough with all of these tubes taped together to hold up our body. So I could stand on it, our friends at the Science Center could stand on it, we took it to a school and they could stand on it. It was a lot of fun. But it tells us how strong certain shapes can be, right? So let's go back to that idea of our driving question again. How does the shape of an object affect its properties? Well, right, we saw that certain shapes work better than others, and certain shapes of our objects can make the material stronger, right? With our cylinders, we noticed that the paper became much stronger, right? If I were just to hold it up, nice flat piece of paper, it could probably hold up nothing, right? But when I turned it into a cylinder, it automatically turned much stronger, right? All of that weight, like we talked about, was evenly distributed across the top of my paper, and my paper became stronger, right? The same thing happened with my triangular prism. I was able to hold up a book, right? But compared to other shapes, right, the strongest were our rectangular prism and our cylinder. Okay? Now, why is this really cool and interesting and important to understand? Well, if we look in nature and look at what people build, right, engineers and architects, right, from long time ago till now, we can see they're using some of the ideas we're talking about right now. The understanding of how shapes can affect the stability and strength of objects. One example is thinking about a long time ago with buildings, right? This is a building called a Pantheon in Rome. Beautiful building, right? And you can see they used cylinders here, much like the cylinder we just made, right? As today's part of today's program, right? So it gives you an idea of how they also knew that idea of shapes improving the strength of things, but it's also a really beautiful building, right? So that is something we can use to help solve our problems in our lives, right? Make our lives better. But in nature too, if we look at beehives, right, we can see how they also use these shapes to help them. Right now in the picture, it's not exactly a cylinder, right? It's a different shape, but it lets us know how that idea, those shapes allow for a really strong hive, right? But the hexagon is also a very efficient shape. So that means based on how much area it takes up, it's able to store a lot of stuff, which in this case is honey. Okay? So one, right, the shape of an object can affect its properties. Right? If we make our paper into a cylinder, it can make it stronger rather than flexible. Right? So that's the important idea for today. Now, just like all of our programs, friends, I hope that you had a lot of fun. Okay? If you're looking for more experiments to try from home, feel free to check out our website, lsc.org, and you can from there see our LSC in the House content. So you can see lots of different experiments to try similar to this one. You'll be able to see what the experiment is, how to do it, the materials that you're going to need to follow along from home, and some of the ideas, the big ideas and big vocabulary that you're going to be learning about as you do the experiment. But you can also see lots of other things like Miss Caroline and Mr. Alejandro, their live from content, as well as Mr. Andrew and Mr. Mike's planetarium content, as well as lots of our trivia stuff and catching up with Fred and Colonel Quail too. So I hope that you had fun. what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and switch back to Facebook on my second screen. So if you've been asking questions, I apologize, friends. I haven't seen it. But if you do have a question, and hopefully maybe I can answer it, I'm going to go ahead and take a look. Okay, but if you're going about the rest of your day and the start of your week, we hope that you have a wonderful week ahead and a wonderful Monday. So happy Monday, friends, okay? So let me go take a look and see if we have any questions. But if you're heading out, friends, enjoy the day. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next Monday. All right, let me take a look. Oh, you're welcome, friends. You're very welcome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us. Let's see. Oh, you're very welcome. Bye, Vivian. Bye, Peggy. Let's see. Oh, you're welcome, Caroline. Thank you very much. Awesome. I see some of our friends recognize the hexagon, right? That it was that shape. That's awesome. Cool. I like some of our friends' feedback that they appreciated that we're sharing about architecture, right? Which is really interesting. I love it, right? Oh, Diane, I'm glad your 4-year-old had fun. Oh, yeah. So some of our friends are asking about the experiment we mentioned with the paper towel tubes and making them into honeycomb. I don't have any pictures on me right now as part of today's presentation, but maybe next time I can add that in and we can end with that, okay? So let's see. All right. Oh, I don't see any questions. So friends, if you asked a question and I just missed it, right? I apologize, but I hope you had fun. I hope that you learned something, enjoyed today's program, and we will see you next week. All right? So I'm going to head out now, friends, but have a wonderful day and thank you for joining us. Bye.